So, in this lecture, we're going to be going over material that you will have been exposed to in Chapter 20 of the textbook, which is the West in an Age of Religious Conflict and Global Expansion. Here, in this lecture, I will be going over focusing on the Protestant Reformation, the Spanish Inquisitions, and then the globalization of Western Christianity and commerce. So what I wanted to do is first talk about Christianity, because to get an understanding about what takes place in Europe at the time that we're going to be covering, you want to have some sort of understanding about the development of Christianity within Europe. So if you look here on the upper left part of the picture, excuse me, what I'm showing is that the religion of Judaism is which Christianity came out of. And Jews believed that there would be a Mashiach, an anointed one that would come and redeem them from essentially Roman occupation. And a man named Jesus is recorded by believers that this man, Jesus Christ, a Jewish man himself, did fulfill the prophecies of becoming the chosen one. Now, the word Christ is the same word as the word I just used. So Messiah in English is the same word for Hebrew Mashiach. Christ comes from Christos. All these mean anointed ones. Okay, so that's a title. Jesus is just the name. And so the story goes that this man died for humanity, and him dying, a punishment of a torturous death on a cross, which was what Romans did to criminals, didn't fit the majority of Jewish believers' idea of what this anointed one, this chosen one, should be able to do. They expected a warrior conqueror, and here Jesus is recorded to have died. But this death to Christians was actually the greatest thing that he did, because they believe he died for humanity's sins, and they would celebrate this ritual of death, redemption, and resurrection through ritual and holidays, right? So now Christianity was viewed as a breakaway from Judaism. So for the Jewish authorities, Christianity was not acceptable, and Romans also had their issues, the Roman authorities, with Christianity. So you see in this picture here, what ends up happening is that while the history of Jesus is very murky, and what was happening in the first century with Christians, it's murky. It's not really clear for historians anyways. But what is clear is that they did face persecutions by the Roman authorities, as we see here, Christians being burned on crosses and fed to the lions at Colosseums and so forth. Now what's wild is that they go from this lower status of a breakaway group from Judaism to being suppressed by the Roman authorities, all the way into being embraced by Roman authorities. So here on the far top right, I have a picture in church, and it's reflecting the Constantine, a Roman emperor who has a vision of a cross and ends up believing in Christianity. And so what ends up happening is that he makes it legal to be Christian, while before it was illegal, and he sets up these religious councils. And so down here we have like the Council of Nicaea. He's trying to create unity in terms of what's going on in the church. But then what happens is the other shift, which is by the time we get to the 5th century, so we start in the 4th century CE, to the Theodosian Code, in which Christianity now is the only religion that's legally allowed. And there's a suppression of other religious beliefs or anything that is considered a breakaway from the universal church. Now, this church is broken up into several patriarchs that were heads of the church of different locations. So Alexandria, Egypt was a big one. Constantinople, Antioch. Antioch's in Syria, which, by the way, according to the book of Acts, is the first place that the term Christian even came into being, and that's in Syria, okay? And we also have the Patriarch of Rome. So the majority of Christian leaders that are integrated in the Roman Empire are situated in the eastern part, which is Greek-speaking. The one church leader, the Patriarch of Rome, that is actually seated in the Old Seat of Rome in Europe is actually in the Latin-speaking world. And there are several things that's going to happen. Is that there's a linguistic divide and there's some other political problems. Now, I have over here talking about the Vandals sacking Rome. Rome falls apart around this time, but ends up staying, the church remains. On the other hand, with the Eastern church, eventually Islam is going to dominate and marginalize, and there's going to be this divide between the linguistic side and then also due to political situations in which eventually the eastern part of Christianity is going to have a break, okay, with the Western. And so when we talk about Christianity in Europe, it's Christianity that has isolated itself or been separate from the other branches of Christianity. And so for now, that's just a good covering of the background of Christianity. And in the next lecture, we're going to talk about then how this affected the development of Europe.